Hey everybody, we are back, episode 18 of the Huddle. Few people thought we would get to 3, let alone 18, but here we are. As we've been talking about for weeks, hyper politics is boiling over. Cheeseburgers, SNL, Elon Musk, Macron visiting the tomb of Napoleon. What does it all mean? It means more inner circle analysis inside the Huddle. As we said, this is episode 18 of the Huddle, joined as always, Brendan Kownacki, good guy to know. Brendan, what a week. I thought things would slow down. We had that great speech, President Biden, bringing the country together, build back better. But yet, here we are in early May, and I got to say, it has been one of the craziest weeks we've ever seen. We've got 11 Madison Park going vegan. We got the Gates divorcing, and Elon Musk arguably having one of the best weeks of his life. What are you watching?
I love it. Even on the slow weeks now, it seems like there's just a cornucopia of news in so many directions, right? That we see coming out of his first 100 days. President Biden has a 57% approval rating. Good number. And then, like you said, Elon Musk, though, even though he has this trend line that goes up and down, people love him, people hate him, they want him on SNL, they don't want him on SNL. This guy can't be beat. This week, he brought 4 astronauts back from the International Space Station, and he just successfully landed this rocket, which is probably going to be the engine that propels us onto Mars. So I have to say, what does it matter if he's on SNL? It doesn't make a difference.
Well, I think the SNL thing is absolutely fantastic. They've had other CEOs on there before, other kind of misplaced presidential candidates be the host. But Elon Musk is a special kind of earned media monster. I mean, this guy generates so much earned media, so much attention. It basically, I think, underrates all his various businesses, all his various projects. And you're right, what a week he's had in the space. There's a great picture SNL released of him, obviously hanging out with the writers. He's all masked up. I think his shirt said Nuke Mars, which is pretty bizarre. But while he's working on scripts, he's landing rockets. I mean, it's unbelievable. What are your expectations for SNL? I mean, I'm still a big fan. I'm not even sure people even know what the hell SNL is anymore. I actually watch it every week. I think it's a great barometer to kind of figure out what the hell's going on in the country. What are your expectations? Do you see him being funny? Do you think it's going to be a failure to launch situation? Will he appear on stage with the other actors?
The funny thing about SNL is that it was so political for so many years, and then it steered away a little bit after the Bush Gore years. That people said that the irreverence went away, and it's come back to its footing there. And so that is a question: is what are they going to try and do with Musk? Like you said, they've had other CEOs. Donald Trump made a controversial appearance during the 2016 campaign, but we've also had people like Al Gore host. We had Steve Forbes host, I believe, Rudy Giuliani. So they've had their share of people outside of the Hollywood sphere. But I think that you're going to probably have them do everything from comparing him to Tony Stark from Iron Man, which is maybe the greatest comparison when you look at how this guy lives his life, to trying to decode what his son's name is. We'll famously remember it looks more like an equation that got me to fail trigonometry than it did a baby's name.
Yeah, and you got to wonder too, will it be a Dogecoin reference cryptocurrency? You got to think that's going to be worked in there as well. But like I said, I think SNL is super important. I think it's a good totem pole to finding out what's going on. You got really smart, creative people there in the writer's room. And I think Weekend Update really gives you a good idea of what jokes they can talk about that, kind of reach the national populace. I think it's a good totem pole to kind of measure what's going on. I actually tell a lot of clients to pay attention to what SNL is making fun of. Also, I think SNL could be the new Davos, right? I mean, how boring it is to go to Davos, hang out in Switzerland in the freezing cold, or even get an op-ed placed in the Wall Street Journal is the future for thought leadership communications for CEOs. SNL, what do you think about that?
It definitely helps to define the lexicon, even when it's not a direct correlation of because SNL said it, it's important. But they are some of the smartest, most acute minds in the entertainment industry who are watching. And Lorne Michaels, for over 40 years now, has been driving a standard of precision when it comes to watching what's happening in the news and making it timely for that 90 minutes every weekend.
I don't know if I told you this. In 1999, I actually got to sit in the writer's room at an SNL broadcast. Jennifer Aniston, Brad Pitt were the hosts. Sting was a musical guest. And I went to the after party. That was a career highlight. Anyways, let's go on to somebody who's had a bad week. Can we talk about Bill and Melinda Gates? The people getting divorced. He's 65 years old. There's this new term that I hadn't heard before. It's called gray divorce. People over 50 saying, hey, I've had enough. I want to move on. I got to say, I'm completely blown away by this divorce. It really caught me by surprise. If they can't make it with $142 billion, who can? What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any love advice for the Gates?
I would have expected that if the Gates couple doesn't want to be married anymore, these are people of such means that they could actually divide the world in half and never have to see each other again. But obviously, there's got to be more to this story. The tabloids are going crazy trying to peg it to Bill's relationship with his ex-girlfriend from years ago, to a translator who's been working with them. There's all kinds of rumors. And then other papers are reporting this is probably going to be drama-free. He transferred about $2.4 billion worth of stock to his wife, just setting forward the fact that there is going to be a division of assets. And they said that there's going to be a real amicable relationship when it comes to still working at the Gates Foundation. So I don't know what the full story is. Maybe we'll never know, but certainly the good folks at TMZ and the Daily Mail are going to be hunting this one down.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. Obviously, what they've done with the Gates Foundation has really set the gold standard for the way philanthropic activities. You know, they famously have given away all their money. I think they've only left, ideally, I think $10 million for each one of their 3 children. But I got to say, I'm really surprised. I think you raised a good point. I mean, I don't know. But I also think the pandemic, we're going to see a lot of divorces. I think anybody who spent quality time with their significant other over the last 18 months may have had enough, even if you don't have $142 billion. I do think we'll see a spike in divorces. But I got to say, I'm really shocked.
The thaw from the pandemic is starting to get underway. We see things like Broadway has announced they're going to be coming back in full force in September. On the other side of this pandemic, people are going to either feel more tied together or they're going to want to get apart. And this is what happens with all kinds of trauma. Sometimes people are pulled together momentarily and then they say, you know what? It was the stress that made me feel closer to you, I don't actually want to stay married here. I've had enough of your burnt toast and eggs. So I think it could go a lot of different ways, but certainly there are a lot of speculations happening around the world about what is this summer going to be? Is this going to be the big summer of love? Is this going to be the big summer where everybody's out there drinking and partying and having sex? And the question is, we don't know. We don't know. It's a little early, but anything's possible in a post-COVID world.
I think what's interesting is the Broadway reference, I think, is really great. I mean, New York is such an important city, not only to this country, but to the rest of the world. It generates so much energy and excitement. I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, George Hahn, who I discovered in a Sunday New York Times profile under the term urban raconteur, which I was super impressed by. So George Hahn, who famously did social media for the late, great Joan Rivers, did this great profile, as he said in the New York Times. He's got an amazing Wikipedia profile. He also has this great Instagram page. Check it out. He's walking around Central Park. He's telling people to drop the sweatpants, put on pants, put on loafers, dress up, get out and about. And he's like urging people, willing them to save New York City, be a part of it. I watch his videos and I'm saying, I'm ready. I can't wait to do the Upper East Side. I can't wait to go to Broadway. I'm super excited to see what happens with that. And maybe the Huddle goes on the road to New York City. What do you say?
We definitely need a trip to Gray's Papaya and a little stroll through Central Park. That's when we'll really get to the inner circle of our country there in New York. Speaking of social media, I think we've got to look at one more person who had not so great a week when the Facebook arbitration board announced that they were upholding the ban of President Donald Trump from the network. Axios was reporting that even the sources within the board say that it was just a lazy attempt, but that it's got to stand. And so they're throwing it back. Mark Zuckerberg will have to decide the fate of the president on his private social network.
The fact that Facebook has this oversight arbitration, it's like judicial council. I don't know. I find it totally crazy. Zuckerberg, and also this week started out, I don't know if you saw this, Trump stumbled into a wedding at Mar-a-Lago. He was ranting and raving about losing the election from 6 months ago. I mean, oh my. Is there anybody better for Mark Zuckerberg than Donald Trump? Can you imagine these two together trying to sort out the communications of the world?
I mean, Donald Trump is living in his own world right now. He is down at Mar-a-Lago. That's the world he commands now. And some people have said, is Mark Zuckerberg going to run for president? Why would he? He literally started his own Supreme Court, and he has this digital planet of which he is the overlord. Why would you run for office when you could just create something the way he did? He has no further worlds left to conquer. I think Mark Zuckerberg is the new Napoleon.
Whoa, good transition there. Let's talk about Napoleon. Macron this week visited. This is the 200th anniversary of the passing of the late, great Napoleon Bonaparte, whose contribution to France is obviously extensive. Also came up with a delicious dessert. Macron laid a wreath at the tomb, not so much celebrating the life of Napoleon, but commemorating it, the 200th anniversary. I think this plays into, obviously, the politics in France. Macron is under pressure. Le Pen is surging. What do you make of it? Are you pro-Napoleon? Are you anti-Napoleon? That's a loaded question. Can you take a position on Napoleon anymore?
Well, like so many people, the question at hand is, can we honor or commemorate or have anything to do with our leaders who were not the most politically correct? I know that you and I were talking before the show about Trent Lott, the former Republican leader in the Senate, and his exit back in the day after giving a toast at Strom Thurmond's birthday party. Now, Strom Thurmond is a notoriously racist senator from South Carolina. The problem is, though, with more than 60 years in the Senate, his contribution, albeit not in line with the politics of today, certainly gained him the votes that kept him in office for decades and decades. I'm not saying that we need to be building statues to Strom Thurmond. They certainly would have been torn down this past summer. But the question is, how do we address the legacy of something that we aren't necessarily proud of anymore, but it is how we got here? And that's about Napoleon. That is the debate about Christopher Columbus, that going back to the founding of the New World, how do we even discuss a man who we don't really like what they stand for anymore?
Yeah, the Napoleon situation is really fascinating. Obviously, he tried to conquer Europe. He was a bit of a warmonger, but he also built up, the administrative base that is France today. It's still common law, it's used in practice, but he also reintroduced slavery, which is very controversial, obviously. And he was, thrown out of the country and died on a British island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Very complicated. But I think, once again, hyperpolitics, Macron, there's no way in his core that he's pro-Napoleon, but he knows the nationalism, the hyperpolitics that we're facing, the anti-globalization backlash. It was really important for him to show up there with his wife and drop off the wreath, which is a good segue because I love French cuisine. I was thinking about a lot this week. The French pretty much eat everything from snout to tail. This week, 11 Madison Park decided to go vegan, with the exception for your coffee. You can still have honey and milk, but the rest of the menu, this Michelin star restaurant, will be vegetables. It's a Michelin star restaurant. It's one of the best restaurants in the world. The prix-fixe menu goes for $335 US dollars. Brendan, what do you think? I mean, I thought Sweetgreen was expensive, but this is a new standard. What do you make of 11 Madison Park dropping meat?
Well, that's a hell of a lot of carrots, Mark. I don't know where else to go with that. But at the end of the day, this is a trend which we've seen a little bit in the last couple of weeks. First, we see the website Epicurious saying that they're no longer going to have any recipes with beef in it because they think that if they give a recipe for beef, people will eat beef, and beef equals global warming. Then, of course, there was this melee of conversations that when we rejoined the Paris Climate Accords, that there's a discussion about the impact of beef and meat consumption and factory farming and what it does to our greenhouse emissions and things like this. So the Daily Mail published an article basically saying, is the Biden administration trying to cut you down to one cheeseburger a month as a result of their goals for climate change? No, of course not. That's not really what was happening, but it brought this hyper politics now down into the kitchen, down into the dinner table. And it leaves a lot of people wondering, is anything free of the political consequences anymore? Can we just sit down and have a meal? But again, the one thing I'm going to say, you can tell me that there's Kobe beef and that it will cost more, that there are certainly delicacies when it comes to sea urchin and caviar and all these different things. What's a Kobe carrot, Mark? Tell me, how much does it cost?
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, white asparagus is about as exotic as I get. I'm also keen to see how they're going to pair beets with a Bordeaux red wine from the left bank. I actually think it's a short-term thing. I can't see 11 Madison Park keeping this going. Listen, I get it. We all want to eat healthier. We want to reduce our carbon footprint. I get it. But, there's something to be said about delicious free-range food. There's a tendency for more healthy alternatives. Under this restaurant though, it just doesn't make. I just don't get it. I mean, Danny Meyer also famously owns Shake Shack, which makes a delicious multiple beef burger. I don't know. I think it's really fascinating. We'll see how this plays out. But you're right. I mean, even what is on your food now has become political. Oh my gosh.
I think it's interesting that we've preached balance. We preach trying to go to the middle. We've preached, all these different things. And this idea to go from, it's not like it was an all meat restaurant going to an all vegetable restaurant now, but it's this idea that you can't even have a balanced meal anymore. What happened to the food pyramid? Wasn't Michelle Obama all with that? There was still meat in there, I think. On our path to sustainability, on our path to a greener earth, on our path to a more balanced Zen lifestyle, can't we have like a little bit of meat, but you still eat the carrots?
I have no idea. Send any hate mail to Brendan Kownacki.
Yeah.
Nice reference on Henry David Thoreau. I told my parents, by the way, as a sidebar, I told my parents I want to be a park ranger. And they were like, no, you're not going to be a park ranger. I was pepped to go to the woods like my hero, Henry David Thoreau.
I'm sure at Walden Pond, he was still eating ducks and things he found in the woods there, and that some of them were animal. But speaking of the self-imposed exile of Thoreau and the forced exile of Napoleon.
This is a triple transition. I love
triple transition.
This is professional.
We've got one more famous face who's being forced out of Washington, perhaps. Liz Cheney. Is the GOP done with her, Mark? Have we seen the timely end of the Cheney legacy?
When Liz Cheney is not conservative enough for the Republican Party, you've entered Waco land. I mean, it is absolutely crazy. I think, though, getting back to the Trumpster, what this is really all about is the Trumpster is going to Kevin McCarthy and saying, hey, Kevin, this woman, Liz, you got to get rid of her. If you want me to help you raise money in 2022 to take back the House, you got to get rid of her. It's interesting. Cheney's not really giving up much of a fight. In some ways, the House Republican Conference is kind of a thankless job, to be totally honest. She's probably getting more attention from the fact that she's not in line with the wackos that are in the Republican Party these days. But I can't believe the Cheney legacy is being pushed out this way. I don't know. Maybe she comes back. But I do think the Trumpster behind the scenes, this has a lot to do with fundraising for 2022.
Kevin McCarthy was caught on a hot mic saying he's fed up with her. And, there have definitely been some public discussions showing that he is still aligned, at least in part, with Donald Trump, who has said that he will announce after the 2022 midterms if he's going to be running for president again. This is a party that's in flux. And so said Liz Cheney in op-eds that were in the New York Times and the Washington Post in the last couple of days. She said that this is an inflection point and that the GOP has to decide whether they're anchoring themselves to this circus that went on from 2016 to 2020 because it wasn't conventional. This was not a mirror image of Ronald Reagan's vision for a shining city on a hill. What is the future of the Republican Party? Is it Reagan? Is it Trump? Or is it something new? Is it something where you can work with the Bidens and the Romneys and the all people in between and trying to find something that can drive us to a little bit more civility?
Yeah, no, I think that is the bet Liz Cheney is making. She's actually raised a tremendous amount of money for her campaign to run for re-election in 2022. Drawing a line in the sand. Are you with Trump? Are you not with Trump? Do you want to see a new future? It's hard to see. Most of our elections are won by propelling going forward. It's hard to see the Republicans doing that by having Trump still a part of the circus as they go into 22 and 24. But we'll see. I mean, I think there's a lot of people making big bets on where the country's going. Nikki Haley, famously, when we talk about her, I mean, she will basically say anything any given day, depending on the question. This is interesting as well. Anyways, I'm a big fan of Liz Cheney. I love to see where this plays out. This is some serious House politics, and there's nothing more cutthroat than House politics. Also, if this is a private closed ballot, I think that'll be different. If it's if it's an off the record closed ballot, I think she stays in power. If it's raise your hands, everybody's in the same room, caucus kind of situation, she probably loses. But we can talk about that next week on the Huddle. I think they meet next Wednesday, so we can talk about that next week. So with that, Brendan, who do you want in your Huddle this week?
This week, Mark, I am picking Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, who recently posted a new video that he is starting a YouTube channel with his wife, Duchess Catherine.
More competition for us. More competition for the Huddle. I don't believe it.
But maybe we can play carefully with them after the funeral of his grandfather. There was much speculation whether he and his brother had helped to at least mend the rift a little bit. This morning, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge posted a birthday message to Harry's son, Archie. It's possible that trying to modernize his approach a little bit, as his brother has done, being a public player out in the public sphere, that maybe this is all trying to bring back to whole a little bit the much divided royal family. So we're going across the pond for my side, trying to just see what the British are doing in this latest week. What about you, Mark?
By the way, that was a nice opportunity there for your sizzle rule, as I know you're attempting to become the new BBC Royal Affairs correspondent. Well done, you. So I am too staying across the pond. I'm staying in the United Kingdom. Someone I want in my Huddle this week, Nicola Sturgeon. She is the leader of the Scottish National Party. And as we record this, there are elections. They're calling it Super Thursday all across the United Kingdom. Some 5,000 city council seats, mayor races, also elections for parliaments in Wales and Scotland. The reason Scotland is so important, Nicola Sturgeon, leader of the SNP, it looks like they're going to win the majority in Holyrood, which is in Edinburgh. They should have a 7-seat majority, and it looks like the makeup of that body will be pro-independence. Sturgeon has said that she will call for a second referendum by 2023. Obviously, this has massive implications for the United Kingdom. It also has massive implications for the United States, as England and the United Kingdom is our most important European ally, especially with nuclear subs based in Scotland. So I'm super fascinated by that. We're going to see what comes back next week. Also, there's a race in Northern England to see if the Tories can expand and make more gains in the Labour heartland. So very fascinating to watch. I think the UK, between the royalty, between the parliament, there's a lot we can learn for our own American politics.
I definitely have wondered if Scotland might lean towards independence and that the Queen, in one of her final acts as the monarch, might bless Scotland's departure from the United Kingdom.
I hadn't thought about that. It's quite a prediction.
It's an ever-evolving situation, but when Charles becomes king, and it could be an entirely different kingdom. with everything the light touches. So
no, 100%. As we're experiencing hyperpolitics in the United States, the United Kingdom is also suffering hyperpolitics or enjoying it, depends on what side you're on, but all super interesting and more for us to talk about next week on The Huddle. Hey, Brendan, man, I thought that was a pretty good show. By the way, did a TBS call, time slot, Conan O'Brien?
I don't think we're getting the Conan time slot. Turner, cross him off the list.